Hi there, welcome to the Noah Presgrove case. Today we're focusing on the side-by-side accident once again because there is still unfinished business there. And I've got a very interesting screenshot text conversation between Jack Newton and I believe Justin Roy. It's from the past. Some would have already seen it, but we need to take a look back at it and analyse, compare, contrast with some other features as well, and also bring back in Carter Combs' account of stuff which happened after it. Because for such a simple event, the way it's been treated and handled in the communication has turned out to be very complex and a little bit piss poor, if I be honest with you. The reality is, if the side-by-side doesn't link to Noah's death, as in the moment of that particular event, such as 2:40 a.m., the rollover, sure, Noah still dies, but later on, in other ways. And if by some chance with the same side-by-side, a separate event. That's the key thing, separate. So the original first event shouldn't be that significant, so it should be cleared up as soon as possible. And yet it still remains a bit of a mystery. But in terms of recollection of who may have been present, as for numbers, that appears to have been revealed. So we can work with that and try and figure out what it could possibly mean. And for anyone that is watching or lurking in the background, welcome to this live premiere. And if you're watching on catch up, feel free to drop a comment down below under this video in the comment section and let me know your thoughts and if you have any additional information, providing it is accurate. For those currently watching right now, you can use the live chat box on the right hand side of the screen. But at the end of this video, just let me know what you think and if you have any questions. In the comment section, you'll find a pinned message by me with additional links if you do want to support this channel. And if you want to catch up on recent coverage by me, the top right screen, there'll be an eye symbol. Click up there, you'll find the full playlist and the previous videos that I have done on other cases like the Kenny Veach mystery. Still very interesting and possibly deeper than ever. With that all being said, the order of how we're going to do things today is a bit of a slide show because I've got it more organised, where we look at Jack's comment originally, then we compare with others, and then we add on with some photos just for thought, like as a background, just to put things into perspective. So without further ado, let's begin. So from this perspective, this is on Facebook. On the left-hand side in the greyed out box is Jack Newton, and then in the bluish purple, I believe, is Justin Roy. And it's just from the perspective of asking questions, receiving answers, and this was in the past, because I don't think these type of conversations between said individuals take place anymore. And maybe those who may feel pushed back or feel like things may have been rumbled or questioned too much, then maybe laying more low nowadays. Depends how you look at it. So really, it's just working with the remnants and what's available at hand. I don't know if I have looked at this in a video in the past. There would have been a time where we're looking at a collection of screenshots and conversations, but that was at a time of when I didn't have a full grasp of this case. So we were learning along the way. And looking back at these, it might make more sense and I might be able to question more now. I'm going to zoom in, if it will allow me, just to make it easier for you when viewing. See Jack Newton up there, profile picture of himself and Carter Combs, and I believe a similar profile picture as of right now because they are together, so nothing too big of a deal there. But one of the questions I believe Justin asked, but do you think the side-by-side accident could have killed Noah whilst you were asleep? We've got to take in mind, at some point, Jack Newton was the individual claiming to have gone to sleep. So when Jack talks about this and that at the time of when asleep, it's basically second, third-hand information, supposedly. And if it's not that, it could be first-hand, and the claim about being asleep is a lie. And the reason why it could well be a lie is from Caden Pressy's point of view, because at a time of when Jack is supposed to be asleep, or at least going to sleep, Caden is awake and beyond, woke up and still saw Jack awake with Noah, supposedly, depends what timeline you look at, from Caden's private or public interview, as we've taken into consideration. At least from the public interview, Caden said at around 2 a.m, Monday, is when he was going to go to sleep. But before doing so, he saw Jack awake, still up. And yet Jack, in the past, said to Noah's father, Victor, that himself, Jack, and his girlfriend, Carter, actually went to sleep at 11:30 p.m. Sunday night. That's really early for partygoers out there when others are still maybe having fun, talking, hanging out, drinking and whatnot. You wouldn't think that people would be able to get sleep that early on. But that's what originally was claimed. And then the story changed, as other family members have stated. From Robin Smith and Ashley Chadwick's point of view, it went from 11:30 to 1 a.m. Monday to then 2 a.m. in the morning. And that was mainly the cut-off point, but nevertheless, at least around 2, Caden saw Jack awake, so it doesn't seem to tie in line there. So yes, you got to take it in mind when it comes to certain people talking about the case. They may come across as if they know a lot, they've got a lot to say, but were they really there in the moment? Yes or no? That's a question with Jack. As for someone like Brooke Bounds Carter, well, that's a lot easier because she simply wasn't in the US at the time. She was on holiday in Greece. So anything and everything that she says or states, whether that be as a fact or a level of uncertainty, it's not coming from the horse's mouth. She's just passing on a message, supposed information. Now, whoever told her a said thing, it might have been in a genuine way or done in such a way that that person giving it out is wording it in such a way that they want the other person to believe it as. I think that's how you say it. But anyway, let's actually look to the response by Jack on screen towards Justin. So Zachary Wright, a part of the LE, told me they had videos of Noah after the wreck. Videos, more than one. Interesting. I believe it wasn't that long ago when we were looking at some other comments or statements. Was it by Brooke Bounds Carter? Was it by Sarah Long or another person? When talking about the side-by-side rollover, there was video footage of the rollover. And then there was additional footage, separate, of being up close to Noah and showing his busted lip. We only saw that just recently as well. Now, Caden Pressey worded it as in his private interview, at the timestamp was 2:40. At a later point, not on the same day, shown by someone who may have been present recording it or received it passed on from somebody else that was there in the moment of the side-by-side rollover, Caden got to see it. Not quite firsthand, but from the point of view of someone that was recording it at the time. It does make you think, if there was someone recording Noah in the side-by-side, were they anticipating for it to roll over or not? Was it done as a bit of fun? Or was it done in advance of, let's use this as some kind of alibi or it could help in the future? To record someone getting into a vehicle is kind of like what you'd think with YouTube. Oh, let's get the camera out, let's record someone dangerously driving about and perform maybe a stunt. Is that what Noah was trying to do? Well, based off that mentality, you'd think it's less likely that Noah was trying to leave the property and go home then. He was just trying to do something cool in the moment. But we can consider that later when analysing the quality of the ground. But yeah, to refer back to Caden describing roughly the video, that a guy walked up to Noah close, showed his face, Noah's face, and the rollover, and that was pretty much it. No mention of a busted lip, only a bloody nose, and that's pretty much it. Now, Caden used the word a photo was shown to him, and there was a video. two separate things, or was the photo a screenshot of the video? I'm not too sure, to be honest, but not multiple, just a video. That's how Caden worded it. But anyway, most important here, mentioned by Jack, was Noah was driving the side-by-side with 5 to 6 other people in it. In response, that's a good thing then. Why is that a good thing? Well, I guess it's because they were inquiring, was it that directly the event that killed Noah? And in response, Jack didn't say yes, didn't say no, just simply explained that there was videos of Noah after the wreck, as in it can show what Noah looked like and could be seen as evidence, and the other person's acknowledging it as, that's good that there's evidence. I'm guessing that's how you could interpret it. Then Jack says, and they flipped behind the house in the pasture. We'll get to that shortly as for the definition. And when I went up there, up where? They said the other phone that had pinged anywhere close to where was found was mine. And that's the reason they had all the polygraph stuff there. And when I passed it and said that there's a bad connection out here. It's poorly worded. But the reason why it's interesting reading this is because a lot of people are stuck on the polygraph situation. Did he pass? Did he not? He says he passed, but then another time it's said to be inconclusive, which isn't good enough. What's the polygraph all about? Did anyone else take one? How useful is a polygraph? How reliable? Not so much. But the actual reasoning behind taking one in the first place. And I did mention it in the past, but maybe not everybody was around to watch it. At least from what Jack is stating, is that one of the main influences behind doing this polygraph is because of the phone of his pinging near to the highway. And the reasoning behind all of that as to why one thing led to another is because of a bad connection. So a bad connection can manipulate where you actually are and mark it false elsewhere. Is that Sam? Is there anything else to analyse before we move on? So the other phone that had pinged, Jack's, that means there was at least 2 phones that pinged near the highway. Who else could have been at the highway? Or who else was in possession of their phone when using it at some point? It's okay talking about these phone pings, but what about the timestamps of them? The only other reference of a phone ping is that conversation via Snapchat of a stranger claiming to be Noah's friend, texting or messaging Colton, the brother to Jack. And Colton responded by saying, yes, the phone that pinged at the house was JJ Bumpass. Does that link here? Who knows? Let's not go too far this time. Keep it somewhat under control. At least 2 phones pinging near to the area. Very interesting. Do we have anything else low down? Not so much. So you can let me know your thoughts about that. And then we've got this one by Carter. This one's obviously interesting because this is like after the side-by-side rollover. We don't need to stick on this too long because I have read it out already. But Carter, and let me just add, the reason why this is interesting is because Carter and Jack are together at the time. Whether you call it casual or not, kind of like in a relationship, boyfriend, girlfriend. And if Jack originally claimed and stated that at 11:30 p.m. Sunday night that he went to sleep with Carter in the bedroom and remained there up until near to 5:50 a.m. Monday morning, so completely out of it all before that. Obviously it doesn't align with Caden Pressey's timeline, of course, so it's more of a standout individual one. If it was really true about going to sleep at 11:30, then waking up 5:50 in the morning the next day, Monday, yeah, it could show quite a great level of innocence. But when you got Caden Pressey on the sideline saying, well, I saw Jack awake, he wasn't asleep, well, then it makes you question, well, what about Carter then? If Jack was claiming to be asleep with Carter and it turns out it was a lie and he was awake, then where was Carter then? Awake as well? Well, that's how it seems to be from Caden's timeline. And you could say, well, where about does Carter's name come up into it? Well, I guess you could argue and say 5:15 at the very least, when Jack returns back, supposedly announcing the news of Noah's death. And whilst we are jumping a bit ahead, it's just once again to put it into perspective. It's okay, Carter Combs talking here, but is this first-hand information or second-hand? It would have to be first-hand for Carter to say she was there in the moment of the event, assisting, helping Noah. But once again, this is a bit weird because basing it off the original time given, if Jack and Carter went to sleep, then what was Carter doing at around the time of Noah's shower? Because she's saying she was actually helping Noah have a shower. So is it all a lie, just like Jack, that they were awake? Or is it more so as a slight possibility that Carter was asleep with Jack, but then at some point Carter woke up and then decided to get up, go outside or leave the room, and then one thing led to another, hence being present for the shower, helping Noah, and Jack being asleep, unaware, that Carter was able to do that without any questioning or backlash from Jack, because Jack just wouldn't know at the time. If something so simple such as Carter having a conversation with Colton, which then leads to Jack telling Colton off for talking, or could be considered as flirting, even though it may have not been, you can see the pettiness, possible insecurities, instability. You want to be around that all the time, or is there ways to minimize it? It almost like going behind somebody's back because you know it will make them jealous or they'll start overthinking. So you do your own thing. Now, I know visually we may not have much on screen, but it's just I can think deeper when I've got a static screenshot. It enables me to be able to look back at the text, but what I've just said there, if you want to clip it, feel free to do so. But just to read out what Carter says in the moment, Noah was showered after he got in a little side-by-side wreck. And if you knew Noah, he hated being dirty before going to bed and couldn't really stand because he was drunk. So me and Jasmine Milan helped him. But it's not like what people are making it out to be. We kind of just stood there and helped him stand so he didn't fall or anything. So a form of innocent physical contact was made to make sure he stood up and he didn't slip. Also, he wasn't the only one who got into the shower. One of his best buddies got in with him and they were laughing together. Who would that be then? Could one of the best buddies of Noah, who needed a shower themselves, was one of the guys mentioned here, or individuals at least, where Jack says, Noah was driving with 5 to 6 other people in the side-by-side. That's a lot of people in a vehicle. Now, let's just put it this way. If you were going to go on a road trip or an outing, a drive, a vacation, whatever for the day or maybe longer, and you're with people, you're with friends or family or both and anything else in between, you might have a decent group, a decent size of people all in one vehicle and you're going somewhere. You don't just all get into a vehicle to just sit around stationary or just drive in circles for 10 seconds and then get back out. It just seems a bit pointless, unless you were test driving it. I mean, an earlier event such as shooting animals, well, you've got an aim. You're going elsewhere. You're covering a bit of distance. You're going together to create memories. Maybe that's a bit too far. But to be static on site, you wouldn't just get 6 people getting in for no reason. There's got to be a reason for that many people being in that vehicle. And what was the aim of it? And what did Noah intend to do behind that wheel if he didn't roll over? Where could he have gone? You know, we'll look more into that. The bit about the pasture, don't you worry. We're getting to that right now. So, This is just a screenshot. You can search it for yourself. This is like the official definition if you want to put it like that. There was an audio, and I did click on it. I was a little bit disappointed. I thought it would have given me different accents. For me, it was in English, of course, but with, UK English accent, bit of a higher level one. They refer to it as pasture, okay? Pasture. The dictionary, Oxford Languages, noun, 1. Land covered with grass and other low plants suitable for grazing animals, especially cattle or sheep. Areas of rich meadow and pasture. Similar, grazing grassland. 2. Used to refer to a person's situation in life. She left the office for pastures new. Does that sound? Now, probably could come up with some additional examples, but we haven't got the time for it. Land covered with grass. Does that apply to the party house? Yeah, to an extent. Suitable for animals, though, possibly, but in terms of the site of the property, they've got individual fields for that. So I don't think the animals would be encroaching onto the party house property. I mean, the surrounding house area. And I'll show you that in a second. But it's just interesting, this by Jack, at the time that it was revealed there was a handful of people, passengers, and the location where it did take place. So, I don't have any photos from round the back of the party house. The best thing that I have is from the official party footage when, at 1:05 a.m. Monday morning, recorded by Caden Pressey outside front porchway, or more so on the front patio area, you got Brylan slapping Noah. And as soon as that happens, Brylan scoots, runs away. Camera pans to the side. You see the barn and shed just there in the backdrop of the photo, and that big lamp post light which illuminates the area, and you can see the ground, the texture. Looks a bit dry, well, rather dry, but that supposedly is grass, okay? That could be considered, to an extent, a pasture. And you can imagine it looking like that, to an extent, round the back as well. But, unfortunately, we don't have photos of round the back of the house, where the side-by-side rollover took place. All we do have is Google Earth satellite imagery. So let's head on over there right now. Here we go. And we'll just scroll up to the party house itself. Hopefully the image quality is reasonable. I did tone down the rendering to a small extent, just to make sure the file size and everything was compatible. I'm just experimenting in the moment. But got to take in mind that this satellite imagery of what we're looking at has been taken at a different time. It's more updated this than compared to that very small clip or screenshot what we saw from the footage from Caden's recording of Brylan slapping Noah. Change of season, timing can greatly impact, and the difference with the ground, the texture and the quality of it. Here it's a lot more luscious green, but with what we saw previously and the party when it took place September time, very dry, bit of a drought, not as much greenery, vegetation like that. So it does vary, but you can clearly see there is a pasture present. Now, I'm not too familiar with the ground, the land itself, so you can see there is outlines to indicate where the fields are, owned by them, and where certain activities have taken place, and alternative ones may have, like possibly Sarah Long, slip of the tongue. Oh yeah, if partygoers were to be collecting Noah's teeth in the wheat field, well, where would the wheat field be? On this side of the land, or round the back, somewhere down here? I wonder. There doesn't seem to be too much activity with the land itself, but you can clearly see that there are forms of cattle, animals like that, where it's highlighted in black. The waterholes, I'm not too sure where they are. But you think of a pasture, this could be an example, but more so around the back of the house, which would be here. There was a time, though, where there was a trampoline in the backyard garden area. What I would like to know, before we go any further, there is a bit of an outline next to that tree, a black line, which would indicate like a fence. And why would you need a fence on land that you already own? Well, simply just to create like a boundary of what land is being used and what land isn't. And furthermore, if there is cattle and animals, you don't want them crossing on over and getting on site of the party house property at any point. Because if they did, they could go up the bloody road and then you get cows crossing the railroad track and going on the highway. Major problem, right? Well, I guess it would give some people other things to hit. We're talking about the hit and run obsession. I mean, when it comes to animals being hit, yeah, maybe it can happen by accident. And in general, it happens maybe more in the US compared to other countries. But what is the bloody kill count when it comes to some people? Because like some party goers, whether it be like a TikTok post or maybe something mentioned on Facebook in the past where they casually say, oh yeah, just recently hit a deer and in the past hit a hog, killed 2 of this, 2 of that, a baby this and a baby that, and yeah, still more to come. I mean, could you say it's a bit like a psychopath in a way? I know like people that hunt animals to survive and where they live and the environment they're in, there might not be too much emotion sharing, but that's not like complete psychopath. Like when you just kill for the sake of it, for the fun of it, or just so casually, and when you talk about it, just no remorse whatsoever, or possibly not so much a psychopath, but an alternative where you do show a reaction, but it's still like you don't care. You might even find it funny. It's just questionable behaviour and attitudes like that. Not everyone will have the same standards or attitudes towards animals in general, but there's a way of going about it. So when you got people maybe tied up within a case and the way they talk so openly about other things and death and things being killed, it might raise a few eyebrows, don't you think? Anyway, referring back to this area, there appears to be an outline there, fenced off. Those that are familiar with this location and have physically been there in real life or seen footage, fair enough, but I haven't, so I'm just working out on the spot. But I can clearly see that there are some track marks. I'm not indicating that these track marks are relevant to the party, but it just shows a possible route it's taken. Go around the back of the party house and comes around here and twirls around there. So there's probably going to be a gate somewhere here, possibly. Yeah. In order to get onto the field. Possibly, like how there is somewhere down here, maybe more so to the bottom or somewhere on the left. It's just understanding the access points because they had been used for other stuff. The other thing to acknowledge, round the back of the party house, and it was more so with the text conversation between Caden Pressey and Alicia Lee when it came to, at the time of the party, how it looked visually round the back. I can possibly do a side-by-side comparison someday if that's what you would like. What was once there, what no longer is. No harm in doing so, because there was a certain structure which really stood out to me. Unless it was shadowing or some other kind of obstruction, it's just not there anymore. I'd like to refer back to it in a separate video, so just keep your eyes out for that. But before we go any further with the side-by-side rollover and it occurring round here, like let's say middle of the screen, round the back of the house, in another field nearby, whether it be this field or this field, it's when earlier on the Sunday, getting after the afternoon, I guess getting closer towards the evening time, when Caden Pressey said in his one of his interviews, or both, private and public, that Caden, Brylan, Isaac, Jack, Noah, and Mikey, I don't know too much about Mikey if he was there or not, but a handful of guys, maybe 5 or 6 people. Oh, isn't that interesting how Caden worded that indirectly? About 5 to 6 guys all together in a vehicle. Not the side-by-side, but Jack's Ford Ranger. My question is Jack's Ford Ranger different to the side-by-side? And if so, two separate vehicles, do both have the same seating capacity or not? Because when I think of a side-by-side, yeah, you might get some bigger ones, but they always tend to be kind of fairly small and compact, and maybe 2 or 3 people may be able to fit in it. But 5 to 6, I don't know, is it a bit of a stretch? Let me know your thoughts. I don't know if I've ever seen a photo of the side-by-side. Not so much the rollover, but just how the vehicle looked. I've never really seen it, so I wouldn't know the actual seats and the spacing of it all. But nevertheless, Caden Pressey in his account, Sunday, earlier, is that when driving out with the guys, who was actually driving it at the time? Jack, you'd think if it's his own vehicle, driving about in the field somewhere, shooting animals for the fun of it. Now, as for firearms used, probably Jack's AR-15 or Brylan Sweat's hunting rifle or Isaac Rojas' 12-gauge shotgun. Are they the appropriate firearms to be using when shooting animals or birds? And were the shots direct or did the animals die slow? I know that's a separate thing, but it's still worth highlighting because it can be a bit problematic. And were those guys drunk at the time? Even if they're driving on this land away from the highway, were they drunk? Because if they were, what were the chances of a rollover happening there? Or does it just not happen because it's a different type of vehicle which can't roll over, or it's harder to roll over? To compare to the side-by-side, and maybe the suspension and how it leans and how you turn, if you take a sharp left or sharp right, is there a possibility that if there's more people in a vehicle and when it turns, depending what direction the people lean in to counter it or to lean into the same direction it's turning or jolts, does that create an imbalance with that momentum and swing enough to cause the vehicle to tip over? Or does it weigh it down a little bit more and reduces the chance of it taking place? At the end of the day, a rollover supposedly did occur, so can make jack shit. But what's the condition of everybody else? If Noah had a damaged nose or a bloodied nose, what's the condition of others out there? And were they just as dirty as Noah? And was one of those that got dirty in that side-by-side rollover the same person to then jump into the shower with Noah, as Carter described, one of his best buddies? Now, who would that be? Would it be Brylan Sweat or another guy? And once again, that side-by-side rollover, it's okay saying 5 to 6 people. I wonder why Jack didn't mention any names, because he didn't know those named individuals? Well, how would you even know the details of the side-by-side rollover if you were asleep? Oh, because you received second or third-hand information. Okay, then. Well, it's a shame you didn't receive the second, third-hand information as for the named identities of the people in the bloody side-by-side rollover. Because surely someone would know. Surely that video footage of that rollover would indicate who was present on site round the back of the bloody house. Even if the footage was clipped just after the rollover and Noah outside of the vehicle on the floor or getting up, in shot, there must have been some people standing nearby who were also in that side-by-side that got out. Were any seatbelts used, and did anyone fall out in the rollover? Like bowling pins, or did some remain strapped in, tucked in somehow? Just make you think. And as well, if there's like a handful of passengers close together and it rolls, people could bang heads, collide with one another. Just depends the fitting of the vehicle and how many people you can really fit in. Can you really fit in 5 to 6 people, or is it a bit of a squeeze? Were any, on the outside of the vehicle, do you know, well, you might see it sometimes in movies. Not everyone might get into the vehicle, but they might be hanging onto the side or the back. It might make it easier for them to bail if anything did go wrong. But then at the same time, it depends what side they were on of the vehicle when it did roll over. That can complicate things. But still, you got the pasture right here. What other activities took place round the back of the house? And are there any CCTV cameras round the back of the house? whether they work or not, or trail cameras. Interesting. So, in a way, there have been rough details given, but it depends how truthful they are. Would Jack need to lie or pass on lies towards the general public with an event like this if it's not quite significant to Noah's actual death and it's a separate event? There'd be no reason to lie, but unfortunately, when it's come to other stories by Jack, whether that be first-hand or second-hand, the way it's been delivered and then how it comes to the next delivery is a little bit poor and lacking. That doesn't help things. So there seems to be a bit more to that side-by-side rollover. And look, the way I say it, because I'm sure some people want to know my thoughts. Ooh, that kicked me off quite good, that camera pan. Some people could genuinely believe that it's linked to Noah's death, the actual event in the moment of 2:40, but it would conflict with Caden's timeline if it's true that Caden saw Noah inside alive close to 3 a.m, basing off that specific one. And if not, well, the 3:24 timestamp by Caden in the private interview, well, there was no true sign of Noah being present. Caden said he assumed that Noah was there. So there's that. So I need to put into perspective. But me personally, I don't think the side-by-side rollover was fatal. I don't think it directly linked to Noah's death. Could that side-by-side have been used later, onwards, somehow, in Noah's death? Not as a hit and run, but as an alternative cause of death. Maybe, maybe not. But regardless of that, I just want to know more about the side-by-side rollover because there are still many grey areas and it's a bit of a problem. And you could say, does it really matter? Can't we just leave it be and move on to the real important stuff? It's all important when it's a part of a timeline. Because people who say it's not important are the same people that will still make reference to the event as part of their timeline, narration, ordering things about. And to be honest, the odd person in that side-by-side rollover as a passenger could well be one of the best buddies to Noah, as Carter described when getting into the shower. So 2 separate events, but the link together as in the order of when they take place. Now, yes, we don't have the timestamps of the shower, which is unfortunate, but with common sense, you would probably assume and say that there is a consistency amongst most people and party goers that a rollover would occur first and then a shower after because of cleaning yourself down, okay? You're not going to go into a shower, clean yourself thoroughly, deep clean, inside clean, all the areas and whatnot, reaching around. And then what do? I'm going to go outside and I'm going to go swimming in a pile of mud. And then I'm going to go to bed. No, you don't do that. Maybe some will, but most won't. Pigs may be an exception. And I'm actually talking about actual pigs. Are there any pigs on site? It just reminds me, indirect, but of the Dylan Rounds case where there was that obsession that pigs were eating Dylan Rounds and breaking down evidence. Well, it's a good thing we've not come across it here. There wouldn't be any need to. Now, as a matter of speaking about the shower, just to elaborate on it a little bit more, just so you can see it for yourself. I don't know if you want me to do a separate video about it, maybe, as a theory. But what I'm getting at is, if at some point before the rollover you got Jack and Carter asleep, if that was ever true, because it's not confirmed for definite, but if they were, but Carter is also claiming to be present and awake when not washing, but assisting him when he's having his shower. If we knew the timestamp, would make it a lot easier. Was it at 2:40, before 2:40, or after 2:40, when Carter was woken up, supposedly, or woke herself up? How would she? Why would she? Why? Why her and not Jack? If Jack's the best friend to Noah, if Noah got hurt, would anyone pass the message on to Jack, the best friend? Or would there be no need? So what other factors or triggers could cause Carter to wake up? Well, supposedly, and I believe it was worded by Jack, because Carter told him that at a later point. And I think it might have been mentioned in the Parts in True Crime last interview and first interview with Jack Newton over the phone. that Jack was asleep at the time of when Noah walked into the bedroom of Carter's. Jack is sleeping with Carter because they're together and they were asleep, as the original story was, by Jack at 11:30 Sunday onwards p.m. So when Noah walked into the bedroom, Carter was woken up or aware. Whether much dialogue took place or not much really followed after that. Did Carter then go back to sleep, or decide to get up and see what was going on, or decided that shortly after? Could make sense. But why didn't Carter wake up Jack? Why didn't Carter say, "Hey Jack, your best friend Noah's just stole your keys. Just wanted to let you know"? Wouldn't that make a bit of sense? Maybe. Unless Carter knew how Jack would react, whether that be to Noah stealing keys or borrowing them, or Carter at some point thinking, right, in terms of helping Noah in a shower, in the moment at least, would it be a reflection of, I probably should tell Jack before I go and take Noah to the shower and help assist him, because I don't want Jack to think otherwise of something else going on. That conversation may have happened at some point later, because obviously it's been made public by now, and Carter's made it public that she assisted and Jasmine with Noah into the bathroom. It's just to put into perspective that if someone related by blood, such as Colton, if Colton of all people can simply talk to a girl such as Carter, and for Jack to possibly get jealous for that, you can imagine how Jack could react if he heard about his girlfriend being in the same room as Noah of all people, and Noah being unclothed and having a wash. Even if Carter didn't touch or do anything like that, she was close by and present and saw everything in sight, whether you're comfortable or not. Jack, on the other hand, could be thinking, bloody hell, what's going on there? Just based off the reactions from Jack on a smaller scale, you upscale it to a shower scenario and you think you could go nuclear, possibly. Could that be at some point why Carter felt it's not worth telling Jack or waking him up over a certain event because it caused more problems than good? Possibly. This can be a separate video for discussion, or I can just simply reiterate it in a separate standalone one so it's not forgotten about. That's what I probably will do. I thought I'd just throw it out there now at least, so I don't forget completely. And then we just zone in more. But in terms of this whole area, if you had heat signals, markers of everybody's whereabouts and movements, kind of like when you get football, or as people from other countries say, soccer, and they go through the analytics, the details of distance covered on foot, where most of the shots took place, the passing range, shots inside, outside of the box, and it just shows marks of activity. Would that be possible on a map? Not directly through this project, or, well, it could be influenced from the project. If you could place lots of tiny little dots and markers as the phone pings, or is that just not possible? Because this is the thing, out of the 30, 40 people at the party, or if you want to whittle it down to 10 to 15 around Sunday time onwards, how many party goers had phones on them? You could argue and say 99.9%, because people nowadays tend to be on their phones quite often, or at least be in possession of them quite often. You also get the odd few people that just don't rely on them as much or don't bother using them. But I think if you're at a party, you're likely to take your phone to record, take photos, selfies and all that typical stuff, but then also maybe to use to call someone, call parents, friends, if you needed a ride, a pickup, or just to reach out and say, how are you doing? All kinds of stuff. There's all kinds of reasons why you would have your phone with you in a casual, formal, semi-formal environment. But the question of whether you use it often in the moment, at the environment, that's another thing. How many people would have been glued to their phones at the party? From the footage, what we saw, most people singing, dancing in front of a camera, or minding their own business while someone else records it. So there is still a presence of the odd bit of surveillance, if you want to call it like that. via phone. But truly, in terms of all the partygoers that were present, or at least in the moment when it mattered most, which would be Sunday night going into Monday morning, how many people had phones on them and how many people left them at the house? Such as with Sunday, the group of guys going out into the field, driving about in a Ford Ranger to shoot animals. Did they take their phones with them when doing all that? Was there any footage of them recording themselves shooting animals or not? That's another thing, because it could reveal timestamps, of course. But phone pings. This is what's really weird. If it's true that there are so many people at the party on and off with phones, but what about the phone pings? We don't hear enough about that. The only pings what we've heard of is supposedly a ping of JJ at the party, and then a ping by Jack at the place of Noah's body, roughly over here. But that's not exactly true, supposedly, because he was told by police it was because of poor signal. So a poor signal will transmit your phone pinging in a different area, claiming that that's where you are, but you're not. I don't know about that. Would we be able to compare it with the likes of Tyler Hardy, who called nearby at around 5:46 a.m. or so, the first call, which was static, a bad signal. At 5:46 roughly, with that failed phone call because of a bad signal, would his phone ping at that area where the call was correctly made, or would it ping elsewhere? Because if it didn't ping elsewhere and it was accurate, then why would Jack's be inaccurate then? So, and then you've got the other phone pinging nearby to Noah's body, which, as for the identity of them, who knows? But what about everybody else and their phone pings? It's okay about the main focus, this is what we've got to do. I'm just going to show my face. When I compare this case to the Dylan Rounds situation, as in the past of 2022, the way that case went was, from the get-go, early on, it was rich with phone ping data, as some would say, or data. And that's from the perspective of Dylan Rounds, the victim, where he started, where he ended up, and then where the phone ended up beyond. And where it went beyond was in possession of the killer by then. In the moment, it might have been hard to work out, but when you started piecing the bits together over time and making sense and just using common sense, that's just the direction it followed. There was a level of guidance. It's okay having timestamps of footage to prove at what point it took place and how relevant it is to the case. But if there's no guidance, how do you get to the truth? You need both, ideally. With the Dylan Rounds case, it was rich in phone ping data. It was lacking in actual footage. Trail cameras not present or not, capturing anything. No CCTV cameras whatsoever. It's in such a desolate rural place, Lucin, Utah. Okay? I know there might be a range of people from Oklahoma because of this case of Noah Presgrove, but when I talk about pronunciation, because I'm sure people still pick up on other states and think it's not Utah, even though I prefer to say it that way, it's Utah. Okay? Don't worry, I have learned. I've been a good boy at times. But with Dylan Rounds, eventually what happened in that case was there was timestamps or time lapse. It was kind of photos or videos pieced together as a video, basically. And it was accidental, but it was helpful. It was a key piece of evidence and it gave timestamps as well. But that came later. But you got the best of both. It just happened that with the phone ping data that occurred first, there was a direction, an order of how things went and where the person went to. And then beyond, which was then figured out as, well, by then, Noah's already dead. And that was complemented, not in a good way, but helped with the evidence of that time lapse. So that's what revealed it then. Combined it together, helped reinforced it. That's what's needed within the Noah Presgrove case. You got footage here and there and remnants, and maybe beyond if it's hidden. Possibly with timestamps too. That's all good and fine. The proof of who was what, where was where, and when, to an extent, can be done by who's within the shot of that camera. Well, whoever is within that video or can be heard in the background will link to being present at that timestamp from when this video had been recorded or the photo taken. So you got that. But beyond that, you would want the actual phone pings where person was. And I don't know if it works differently or there's alternatives. This might be where all links back to that Life 360, which Justin Roy has been going on about quite often, and maybe some others. I've never heard of Life 360. Is it a tracking app? It just basically shows where you have been. Does it give footsteps? Does it give phone pings associated with timestamps as well? Well, if any of that is possible, and if everybody had an app or some kind of tracker of some sort, phone pings like that, could be beneficial. You could get like a heat marker of activity. At any point from Sunday to Monday, where did footsteps go to? Not literal footsteps, but more digital footprints. How far did they reach out and whose were they? And why did they go over there? Was there ever a time besides Noah walking away to cool off? Did any other party goers mysteriously vanish from the party temporarily? Did any individual party goers randomly walk off to the woodland area for no real reason? You know, if you could track some abnormalities, abnormal movement. You want to talk about abnormal movement to an extent, I guess you could apply that with Caden's cousin and the cousin's friend leaving and then being driven by someone else, another individual, down the highway. And then Alicia catching on with that and thinking, that's not right. That shouldn't be happening. You know, something like that, where you pick up on it in question. But there is a limitation. Even if a lot of party goers, if not most, had their phones with them, what percentage of party goers actually had their phones on them when participating in an activity, coming or going from the party? I mean, whether Noah's just an exception who just happened to walk away without his phone, would anyone else do the same? Well, wouldn't that apply to Caden when at 5:15 beyond, going down to the highway to see what was happening, but leaving the phone at the party house? Maybe some events would be explainable because of it being in the moment, in a rush, panicking, emotional time, not quite thinking clearly. And why would you need a phone with you anyway? Well, maybe to contact a friend, a loved one, or a family member to spread the news. But in the moment, you might not be thinking. As for other activities at the party, even if it was non-negative, if it's just in the moment, and if people are drunk, fumbling about with a phone, leaving it nearby, who knows? I mean, what you got to take in mind, the footage, what we have seen, even though it's limited, the stability of the camera work isn't that bad. So, is there ever a time where it could be exaggerated? Okay, alcohol present at a party, being given out or people having access to it of not the correct legal age, issues there. People supposedly getting drunk. But how bad? That people couldn't actually stand? Because when you see the footage, is it visible that people are drunk in that party footage? Just as a little suggestion, right, from Saturday or Sunday, do they look completely incapacitated or not? This is what I mean. It's yet another thing within this case. Some people might tune it up, exaggerate it just a little bit more to push over the agenda. Not saying it's a bad thing, but some people can get fixed onto it about the social hosting laws and rules being broken. And whilst it may be true that laws were broken, some people might try and change the wording to make it sound even worse than what it was. It's bad enough, but let's try and make it even worse, make it sound more reckless and more dangerous. I'm just using that as an example and comparing it to the party footage that we've seen. People are still consciously alive, talking or singing, standing up straight, right? Not all flat out on the ground, not tumbling about and falling over. That's not really happened. There might be other footage which tells a different story, and that's locked behind something. But these different elements, once again, questioning which may have not been questioned before, or possibly not questioned in a while. This video has already created 3 to 4 new video ideas. Now, granted, they may be repetitive to what's been said today. There can be standalone discussions, which can have their own comment section as well. So if you feel like you've missed out on certain elements of this video, or you forget key points, I can always reiterate it again in the future. But hopefully you found it somewhat interesting, this, and feel free to hit the like button, share it, so it spreads that awareness. Mainly, ideally, the focus of today's video was the side-by-side rollover, the additional details by Jack, and the questions that go on from it, and the location of where it took place too. I don't know if I've done a focus video quite like this before. Obviously with the side-by-side, done several there, but it was on different elements and aspects. And I think even a demonstration too. But this is kind of like bringing it together now, and then including other important factors and ways of measuring what did happen and what didn't, and where and when, as if it's still available or not. So, just wanted to perform a little magic trick just then, because we need to shine some additional light elsewhere. Besides the Noah Presgrove case, there might be the absence of the odd individual here or there. One example could be Trisha. I think they had a black and white profile picture. I'm just giving a heads up in case people are wondering who, and where people are. An individual called Trisha has said that they broke their back recently, but they've got it under control and they're just simply recovering. But of course, if Trisha needs to visit Brokeback Matrix Mountain Camelback Ranch, it's under control as well. And we'll send a few that way. Right on the back, that should improve the healing and speed it up. And once again, aside from the case, the odd other individual, I believe Sharon, some people may not have seen Sharon as much just recently, and even if it's just temporary, that's supposedly because of Wi-Fi, internet going down, intermittent, pain in the arse, not just for, watching videos and passing time, but also getting on with other stuff. Kind of like with me, with YouTube, when I've had those issues, and it's very annoying, and it can just happen like that, and sometimes it lasts longer than others, and you saw, as it was for me, it lasted like for days or something on and off. It was really frustrating, and it just ruins that flow. But what I have noticed, the Wi-Fi for me was okay. But once I came across Sharon with her faulty box, I don't know how you'd call it, that's too far, but the Wi-Fi not quite working, there must be something in the air. Something in the air, rather infectious. Like it has such an impact on my bloody Wi-Fi, and then, who knows? Nothing's happened yet. But if Sharon has an issue with her box, what's the chances it's going to indirectly pass on to me? I don't know. Take in mind, that's not being negative, that's just being light-hearted, okay? Just wanted to throw it out there, just in case anyone thinks, oh, don't get too aggressive. Don't worry. Wow, I'm calm, it's all fine. But the only additional thing is, besides the healing of one's back, Sharon has been biting her lip a little too much recently, causing the lip to become rather tender. This, okay? It's very unfortunate. Why do people bite their lips? Don't worry, this is not a banana demonstration type video, but the act of biting your lip can be accidental or done on purpose. It might be a coping mechanism. It could even be just a habit. It doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, you could bite the inside or the outside of your lip, maybe when you're eating, putting something into your mouth, whether you're supposed to be or not, that's another subject. But then other times it could be just whilst you're thinking, like that. Now, I don't really bite my lip. Well, I'm not really consciously aware whether I do it or not. Some people may bite the side, like, I can't even get my jaw. I look like I've got issues when I'm trying to do it myself. I can't do it in a, ooh, yes, type of way. I just can't do it. But what I can do is heal, at least, which is better than nothing. How would you heal somebody's lip or lips? If they're rather raw, if a chunk has been bitten out, or whatnot? I don't know. See, the thing is, it's a little bit unrelated, but there was a claim in the past that I wear lipstick in my videos. And that was way back then. Obviously not, but it was rather funny. But does it give me any ideas? Well, lips, the colour, you got to test that. The texture, got to test that. Any punctures, any damage to the surface, that's got to be looked at. Quite extensive. But there's only one tool that can be used, which works. Yeah, we'll leave it there for now. Thanks for watching. My name's Warlike Raph. Be sure to share this video if you haven't already, and we'll see what happens next when it comes to this case, because at the end of the day, there are still a lot of unanswered questions and grey areas. And with the video ideas, what I've generated through this is rather interesting. I'd like to use more material and photos when narrating over it, but one doesn't have access to it all, and I think most people don't anyway. So like with the shower, narrating over that. And I don't mean, in full shot and everything, providing it's blurred out. Just as like a background, I guess the other thing that can be done is stock footage. Literally a photo of a shower of some sort, and you just talk about it. You like when you get these spooky stories, the same happens there, of a bedroom, a window, a woodland, static, or there's a bit of movement as you narrate over it. So people can like focus in and almost like become into a trance of what they see on screen for that additional focus. Not quite being hypnotized, but you can see the methods to create that atmosphere and that tone. I tend to do it with still screenshots of text on screen. And whilst I'm talking, I'm not using a script, even at times when there is clearly words on screen, but I'm going on and on and on. That's from in here and not on paper and not on screen. Sometimes I might use what's on screen as like a marker, a measurement tool, and so to remind me of another point, but that's mainly it. I did try with the comment section once on YouTube where I looked at some comments and I switched back, then I switched back, and then back and forth, and it was somewhat effective, but it got a little bit messy trying to order it, so I didn't get the videos mixed in the wrong order. But, each case is different. Some have more evidence than others, but it just goes to show that this particular case has a handful of material, but it's so much more disorganized compared to the Dylan Rounds case, which had significantly less evidence and a lot more potential wasted. Let that sink in. Once again, comparisons being made and more in the future. I'll see you next time. Goodbye for now.